Hi, this is Joe Ozimek with the Environmental Services Division at Coachella Valley Water District, and we're going to be doing our annual site-specific chemical training. You went through this last year, and this is a regulatory requirement. So the whole intent behind this is just to do an overview, a refresher on some of the information that you should already be aware of. So for our agenda for the next couple of minutes, we're going to be going through the safety data sheet, the SDS, and there's 16 parts to that. We're not going to go through each individual part. It'd be pretty tedious. We're going to hit on some of the highlights, and we'll talk about that shortly. We'll talk about the chemicals on site at your facilities, the water recycling plants. We're going to review NFPA information. That's the National Fire Protection Association that provide information to industry and first responders on important things to know about the safety awareness of chemicals and hazardous materials. And lastly, we'll talk about right to know. Where do you access SDSs and important information that you should be aware of when handling and working around chemicals? There will be a brief quiz after this training. If you're paying attention, you shouldn't have any problem in passing that. So let's get started. Safety data sheets, SDSs. There are 16 parts, if you weren't aware. This is a unified, consistent system that's used in the United States as well as countries overseas, Canada and Mexico included. And these 16 parts give you basic information, a quick reference to how to handle hazardous materials and some of the safety considerations. Like I said, we're not going to go through each one of these. Be aware that there are 16 parts. We're going to focus on hazard identification, first aid measures, and firefighting measures. The things that you really need to be aware of and using and storing and being around these chemicals. So the chemicals on site, I know you have more than just these chemicals, but these hazardous materials or chemicals you have on site at quantities greater than 55 gallons, 500 pounds, or 200 cubic feet. I'm required to put together a hazardous material business plan, and that's for our first responders to be aware of the types of materials that we have on site so that in the unlikely event of a spill or a hazardous incident, they're aware of what materials we store on site. So we're going to focus on these main types of hazardous materials that you have at your facilities: chlorine gas, diesel fuel, caustic soda, so on and so forth. Okay. Let's start talking about some of the hazardous materials that you use and store or around at the facilities. Chlorine gas being the first. You should be familiar with this type of material. Just looking at the hazards, the first aid measures, and firefighting measures. Again, this is just to recap and refresh your memory. May cause or intensify fire. It is an oxidizer, may explode if heated, causes severe skin burn and eye damage. Fatal if inhaled, very toxic to aquatic life and corrosive to the respiratory tract, which leads to first aid measures. Obviously, if it gets in your eyes, you want to flush immediately with large amounts of water for at least 15 minutes. And these first aid measures are reviewed in the SDS. The one thing I want to point out is that for inhalation, you definitely want to move away from the area, seek fresh air. You do not want to perform CPR, because if you do that, you're going to take in the chlorine that the person that's gone down has inhaled. So that's one thing to be aware of when you look at these SDSs for chlorine gas, is that you don't want to perform CPR. Firefighting measures, okay, evacuate all personnel. We call first responders. Use water to keep the containers cool. Wear self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBAs, and stop the flow of gas. We perform those exercises, all of us, during the HAZWOPER training. Next is diesel fuel. We do have quantities greater than 55 gallons to fuel our backup fixed generators that are located throughout the facility. Hazards, flammable liquid and vapor causes damage to organs during long-term exposure. It's fatal if swallowed. Can't cause cancer for extended exposure. If it's on your skin, it gets in your eyes, you ingest it for whatever reason. So, if you're working around diesel generators doing repairs, maintenance folks, you want to make sure that, you're wearing eye protection so it doesn't get in your eyes. If it does, flush your eyes with large amounts of water for at least 15 minutes. That is reviewed in the SDS. Skin, you want to wear protective clothing, long sleeve shirts, gloves, make sure the material doesn't get on you. If it does, wash it off with soap and water. Firefighting measures, water, fire extinguisher, and again, wear your appropriate PPE. Hard hat, safety glass, steel toe boots, and gloves. Motor oil. I know this seems very redundant, and in some cases it is. But like I mentioned in the first slides, this is a regulatory requirement that we have to review. So bear with me. I've got the hazards listed here. Again, eye damage and irritation, damage to organs over long-term exposure, harmful to the environment, can contaminate soil and groundwater if it's released and not cleaned up. First aid measures, again, flush your eyes with water for at least 15 minutes. Move to fresh air, remove any clothing that may have that material on it. Wash your hands, your arms, etc. if it gets on your skin, soap and water, and firefighting measures I have listed there. As we go through these, sodium hydroxide, caustic soda has a very high pH, higher than 10. Typically the pH on the material that we carry is somewhere around 12. So it is corrosive to metals. It can burn your skin, can cause serious eye damage, can cause damage to your respiratory tract. So first aid measures, again, I've got them listed for eyes, skin, inhalation, move to fresh air, seek medical attention. The one thing I wanted to make mention too with some of these corrosives, either acids or caustics with high pH, is that you do not want to induce vomiting, cause more damage than anything. Call the first responders, seek first aid, and let them take the appropriate measures to deal with someone who has gone down. Okay. Firefighting measures I have listed there. Again, fire extinguisher, sand, and always wear proper PPE. Sodium hypochlorite, bleach, I'll work with this material. Again, same hazards. First aid measures I have listed here. Seek medical attention, flush your eyes with water again, move to fresh air. Firefighting measures, dry chemical fire extinguishers, and SCBA as we trained in our HAZWOPER training. Hydrochloric acid. I've added here the NFPA placard. We're going to talk about that and how it's organized in the ranking system for the blue, red, and yellow parts of that signage. It's a colorless, yellowish form from impurities. Typically, the chlorine will cause the yellow tinge to that gas, hydrochloric acid. It does have a pungent odor. Obviously, you don't want to smell it, but it does have a very strong corrosive, odor to it. I've listed the hazards, firefighting measures, and first aid measures there. Again, if ingested, do not induce vomiting. Flush eyes immediately with large amounts of water. I know this is repetitive, but we do need to review this each year. Aluminum sulfate, again, corrosive, can cause burns and eye damage. Irritant to the respiratory tract. First aid measures, eyes, again, flush immediately with large amounts of water for at least 15 minutes. If ingested, again, seek medical attention. Do not induce vomiting. Firefighting measures, use water to keep the containers cool, or SCBAs when working with this material if responding to a spill or release. Polymer, with this, probably the biggest hazard is, if it should leak onto the ground, it becomes very slippery. So you need to be aware of that. If you have a release, you're doing a spill cleanup. Eyes, again, flush immediately with large amounts of water for 15 minutes. Seek medical attention, move to fresh air, get out of that area. Use a dry chemical fire extinguisher if there's a fire. Moving on to sodium bisulfate. Again, the hazards, corrosive to metals, high pH, causes severe burns and eye damage, irritant to the respiratory system. First aid measures listed there. Again, flush your eyes for at least 15 minutes. One thing I wanted to make mention too, that when you're working around chemicals, You need to think about, contact lenses. If it does get in your eye, you probably shouldn't be wearing contact lenses. Just a recommendation, be wearing your glasses. If you do have to have some sort of visual support with being able to see nearsighted, farsighted, wear over glasses or chemical goggles. Because if the material does get in your eye for any of these chemicals that we're talking about, it can cause problems with flushing your eyes out. So just be aware of that. Inhalation with the fresh air. Do not perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for the reasons we described before. Firefighting measures, dry chemical or water spray, and wear your PPE. Empty containers. One thing I wanted to make mention, when we're going through this information, we do have regulators come out to the facilities from time to time. The last time they came out was last summer. I want you to be aware that when you do have empty containers, there are regulations that stipulate how you manage those empty containers. What's considered empty is when all the material has been removed that physically can be removed from that container as much as possible. And you leave less than 1 inch of material in that container. I took some photographs at a site that I was at, and we weren't necessarily making sure that these containers are empty. So when inverted, no liquids will drip out and all labeling has been removed or painted out. So if you meet these 4 conditions, it's considered empty. What do you do with it at that point? Well, you can reuse the container. And that's why I'm mentioning if you reuse it, you want to make sure that labeling is either removed or spray painted out, or you can throw it in the trash, so long as you meet these 4 conditions. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions by email or phone, and I'll give you that contact information at the very end. So NFPA, what is NFPA 704? So that's National Fire Protection Association Guidance 704. And that guidance document by this nonprofit organization, okay, lays out this quick reference to what the hazards are related to these materials that you have at your facility. And I've listed in here for you, and I went through the SDSs and I pulled out the NFPA coding on these. So in looking in the upper left-hand corner, if you see that placard, okay, blue refers to health hazard, red refers to the fire hazard, yellow refers to instability. And if there are any qualifiers in terms of whether it's an oxidizer, an asphyxiant, an acid, a corrosive, that information would be presented in the white section at the very bottom. This is a standard approach to forewarning people working with materials that exceed the 55 gallons, 500 pounds, 200 cubic feet that I outlined in our hazardous material business plan of what those hazards are. Okay, so these placards are typically placed on stationary containers, above ground storage tanks, and entrances to locations where these materials are stored, dispensed, used, or handled at or above those quantities. Okay. Typically, they're posted at entrances and location designated by the fire code. So where they're posted is appropriate to forewarn first responders or anyone working with those materials. So I've highlighted one of these, aluminum sulfate, for you. So it's 1-0-0. So what does that mean? The health hazard, if you look to the lower right-hand corner, it's slightly hazardous, okay? Flash point, which is the flammability of the gas given off by the material. The flash point is well above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Something like gasoline that has a flash point that's very low, near 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that would have a very high flammability rating. So it would have a rating of 4. Instability is 0, very stable material. Something that may detonate, something that has a higher rating of instability, like nitroglycerin, would have a rating of 3 or 4. Okay, so as those numbers go up, the hazard ratings typically go up with that material. And of course, something like chlorine that's an oxidizer, it will be qualified at the very bottom with OX, as I've indicated in the NFPA. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your supervisor, or you can always contact me, okay? Important information to be aware of, okay? If you want further information, and I know this is a quick review of the hazardous materials and the SDSs, I've given you information to Poison Control. I can reach out to them. There's a phone number there. There's also a nice app that you can download onto your desktop, onto your iPads or your phones. It's free of charge. It's your tax dollars at work. It's from NOAA, and I've given you the email address down there, https cameochemicals.noaa.gov. And what you can do is you can type in or enter your hazardous material, whatever it might be. They have a complete library of all the hazardous materials that are registered in industry. And you can look up the chemical identifiers, the hazard response recommendations. It's a quick reference guide that's easily accessed at your fingertips. I use it quite a bit, both at work and at home. It's a nice tool to have, and it's something that I would recommend. And then, of course, the SDSs. We've been talking about these hazardous materials and going through them relatively quick, but I would recommend looking at those SDSs and maybe giving them some thought and some study in terms of how often do you work around them? What information should you really be well versed in? So as far as how to access the SDSs, okay, you can go to your user programs, as I've shown here on the right-hand side of the screen. You can go to SDS Right to Know, or you can go to the CVWD intranet, and that's the first screen on the left-hand side. If you look at the safety app that's on the internet, it will take you to the safety department link. In that link, in the center, is a link to SDSs. When you double click on that, it'll take you to the directory of all the SDSs that we have, both what you have at your facilities as well as other facilities, both for irrigation, domestic, and sanitary. Okay, so I know it's a lot of information to go over in a short period of time. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me. You can call me at my extension. Be happy to answer them for you. There is a quiz after this. I appreciate your time and sitting through this and reviewing this information again. If you want to go back through any of these slides, your supervisor has been provided a copy of these slides. You can print them out and review them. Keep them at your fingertips. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And stay safe out there. Thank you.